Um, Good evening and welcome to the second fortnightly web chat of mine for the For Britain party, and I'm Anne-Marie. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the leader of For Britain. Before I start, can I ask everyone to share this as much as possible? Reach as many people as possible is precisely what we need to do. And the more the merrier, and any help is a lot of help. So thank you for that. This evening I'm going to talk mostly about, because there's been a bit of excitement today on Twitter about a documentary that's going out tomorrow night on ITV. And this is a documentary, Inside the Far Right, I think it's called. And it has, the media coverage of it today has basically focused on myself. Some, really, really despicable activity by the media going on here. They have essentially, I haven't seen it yet, it's on tomorrow night. I won't be watching it, by the way. I'll be debating in London tomorrow night, but I'm sure I'll see the bulk of it at some point. But I have a general gist of what it's going to be. It is essentially a lot of far-right groups, some of them smeared as far-right, some of them actually far-right. And there will no doubt be some comments in there that I would not approve of or agree with, but they will place me in among real far-right groups. I've seen clips today with National Front flags flying, and then these clips are sort of interspersed with clips of me. And this is on the face of it clearly defamatory. They are saying also that they have revealed me saying various things when I have said these all along in public. So they're essentially pretending that they have caught me saying something that I wouldn't normally say, and they're doing this in order to smear me, to make me look dishonest in front of my own supporters, and of course to tell the rest of the country that I'm a far-right racist, fascist, and all the rest of it. So I did have a letter from the producer of this show, Hard Cash, and I put out on my website this week. But for those who didn't see it, who didn't see the letter that I sent out, I want to go through some of it, because it is really important. And some people have said to me today, you shouldn't bother with the mainstream media, you shouldn't engage with them, you should just ignore them. Well, look, one of the things I said I would do when I started out was to take on the mainstream media. We have been, ignoring them doesn't help. This is what people do, and it doesn't stop them. It doesn't prevent them from carrying on with their poison, and their poison does matter. Yes, growing numbers of people are ignoring the mainstream media, and growing numbers of people, I would say around half of people, if not slightly more, know what the mainstream media is, but they are still lying. And even if nobody believes them, they're still lying. And I am really, really tired of it. And it's not pleasant to have your face all over the national media next to really inflammatory headlines. One of them in The Guardian today was far-right groups receiving military-style training in camps, with a great big picture of me next to it. They can't and shouldn't be allowed to get away with this. And of course, all I have at my disposal is my own website, me speaking to you now. I won't get a full response on the ITV programme. And the response I do give, and the response I gave on my website, will be edited by them. So I have absolutely no power to reach the same size audience that they are reaching and targeting me in doing so. The weight is very, very much against us. It's very much against us. And if you haven't got possibly a couple of $100,000 to risk, the law is not an avenue either. The law is not essentially for people like me. The law is not for the little people. It's for judicial activist judges. The entire system is weighted against us. We're far right everywhere. it's even difficult for me to get legal representation, because what the left does is mercilessly bully everyone who dares not to follow their line. And people know this. For example, if a large company, a large firm of lawyers worked for me, they would get bullying by the left, in the way that venues that are going to host us, for example, get this same kind of bullying. So we have very little power. We have very little power. We are extremely vulnerable to attacks that we can't respond to in the way that we should be able to. So I'll just take you through a little bit of this, because it's enough to boil your blood. And by the way, let me just say one or two things about this Hazel person. Now, I've read a few things on social media this week about her. But just to clarify, look, nobody gave this girl the keys to the safe. I have heard, been hearing she was sort of my inner circle. She wasn't. She had nothing to do with forming For Britain, for example. She had nothing to do, she wasn't at any meetings that we have, or any, she was only at things that the public we're going to, and that's essentially what she was, a member of the public. I mean, by all means, we were nice to her. I had no reason to suspect her, at least I didn't see a reason, but I didn't suspect her because I didn't really think of her at all. She was just a person who turned up to all the events. I am a bit annoyed at myself that she gave me a lift. Once she gave me a lift, and it is of course during that lift that she recorded me, and it's difficult to think of that, to look back on it and think the whole time I was sitting in that car I was being recorded, and slightly embarrassing as well, to be honest. But it's been completely exaggerated how involved she was, and also with Jordan Diamond. I've even heard that he was my PA. He wasn't. Nothing of the kind. Again, he was someone who, again, of course, we were nice to him, as we are to everyone. He was a person who turned up to events as well, and we are nice to people who turn up to events. So it's been overblown how close she was to me and to other sort of key people, and she wasn't. But she did manage to, in her underhand, super sleuth way, manage to expose me, saying things that I always say in public. But she did manage to get me swearing. And I'll have to hold my hands up to that. Sometimes I swear. But I guess if we're looking for an angel, then we won't find one. But what we will find is someone who's pretending to be an angel. And there's probably a few as untrustworthy as that. So I'm not a saint. I do swear. And now the public knows that. But I don't call for people to be stoned to death, and I don't call for gays to be executed, and I don't call for blasphemers and apostates to be killed, unlike many I could mention who aren't filmed undercover and infiltrated by the left-wing media. But just to clear that up a little bit. But to go back to this letter that these Hard Cash Productions sent to me, it's quite an extraordinary thing. The arrogance displayed here is absolutely mind-blowing. They really measure everyone by their own opinions and see their opinions as facts. And anyone who doesn't agree with their opinions is a monster, an enemy. These people are, it's cult-like. It's cult-like. You must say the correct things, or they will really turn on you. And it's not a matter of debate. They don't want to have a debate. They don't want to come face to face with me in a debate scenario and discuss the issues. They don't want to talk about the FGM numbers in this country and what we should do about it. They don't want to talk about child marriage or forced marriage or honour violence or apostasy violence or any of the rest of it, because they know that I'm right and they have nothing. They haven't got a leg to stand on. So all they have left is this attack, this relentless attack. And they are ruthless and they are merciless, and they're trying at every opportunity to humiliate me in front of the world as much as they can, and they're doing it. But they're also, you see, it's all that they even pick out the worst possible photographs of me that they can find. So it's a relentless and it's a really nasty attack on me as a person and on politics, which I accept if it's true. I accept to be pulled up on what I say and to be questioned on what I say, but actually what I say. It's the lies. It's the lies and the poison that is destroying our democratic franchise. It really is. We cannot vote in a free election in a free society when we are being absolutely inundated with lies and smears and half-truths from a mainstream media absolutely dominated by people who will not tolerate political opponents. So they're going to pretend that I am dishonest. They're going to pretend that I'm trying to hide who I really am in order to smear me. But also, and I'm going to read out another letter in a few minutes from a philosophy academic who has studied morals essentially for 40 years or so. And she's got some very strong words to say. She wrote to Ofcom and sent me a copy of the letter, which asked, questioning that they are pretending to have uncovered something in order to justify sending an undercover reporter, because there are conditions that need to be met in order to justify this intrusion into privacy. So one of them is public interest, and they cannot, and if the journalist can, I guess, reasonably argue that they couldn't have gotten this information unless they went undercover. And the fact that I say in public what they revealed me saying removes that justification for that intrusion into privacy. So they're essentially going to pretend. They're going to pretend that they uncovered me. They're not going to answer any of the responses that I've sent. They're not going to include, I've no doubt, the fact that I denounced anti-Semitism, for example, at the Traditional Britain conference, which they've made a massive meal of. And I've no doubt that I'm going to be portrayed as racist and anti-Semitic because I spoke at this Traditional Britain event, even though within the speech I told them quite clearly that I did not agree on many of their beliefs. And I also, when I was asked this Jewish paranoia question, I denounced it. I don't think that any of that is going to be in there. So I'm not, again, getting any real response to the lies. It's a lie, and they stage it well. They stage it in a way that it's so difficult to pin them down. And as I said, I haven't got a few $100,000 anyway to take any legal action against them. But they do it so cleverly that it's hard to really pin them down. Instead of saying directly that I'm racist or anti-Semitic, they'll do this. They'll intersperse me with people who are, and the message is formed in the public mind, and the message is very clear. This woman can't be listened to and can't be trusted. So just to go through a couple of parts of this letter, and again, this is the letter I was sent from the Hard Cash Productions. Hilariously, they called it "In the Interest of Fairness." They were going to ask for my opinion on these things, or for my response to these things. And again, they get to edit my response. So here's their explanation for their documentary that they're putting out tomorrow night. And it says the documentary is examining the resurgence of the far right in Britain, its expansion on and use of the internet and social media, the internationalization of the far right with cooperation and contact between groups and individuals on a scale not seen before, the recruiting of more women and young people to different groups, and the impact this is having on British society. We will discuss concerns that groups and individuals on the far right, at a time when Britain is becoming increasingly polarised, attract more mainstream support than ever before. Then they go on to say we will also look at recent race and hate crime statistics in the context of hardening attitudes on both left and right, whether the rhetoric and actions of those on the far right is contributing to an atmosphere where communities are being demonised and targeted. There's so much arrogance and hypocrisy in this, I really don't know where to start. They are accusing me of hardening attitudes and contributing to a rhetoric and an atmosphere where certain people are being demonised and targeted. Now, this is coming from people who are outright lying about me and about other people and about what we believe. And this is extremely, extremely dangerous for people. This is extremely dangerous. We know what happened to Annie the Greek. If you don't know who she is, look her up on Twitter. She was attacked physically attacked by someone calling her fascist in Bristol, because she had been again described in the media as a fascist. And if we go back to an even more serious case, is of course the murder back in 2002 of Pim Fortuyn. Now this stuff does happen, and I'll tell you who Pim Fortuyn was. He was a Dutch politician, and he was a gay man, and he had complained, or at least expressed concern about the level of immigration into the Netherlands of people who from countries where the majority think that gays should be executed, and he was worried about the impact this mass immigration was going to have on gay rights in the Netherlands. Very right to be worried, and we see as well that attacks on gays in the Netherlands have been widespread, and Amsterdam is no longer the safe and free sort of gay capital of Europe that it used to be. And he was murdered by a leftist who believed that he was this far-right fascist, because every other day he was reading in the paper that Pim Fortuyn was a far-right fascist. Now, what is extraordinary about all this is that they will contribute, they will try to contribute to me that I am storing up violence or targeting people, when all I'm doing is criticising a religion, when in turn they are actually targeting people. They are mislabeling and slandering and smearing individuals like myself and others, knowing that this places us in danger, and all the while calling me an extremist and a fascist for criticising a religion. I do not target individuals. I do not target anybody. I criticise a religion. I tell truths about a religion. And if Hard Cash Productions cannot appreciate the democratic right to criticise a religion, well, we know exactly where they stand on the totalitarianism slide. This is totalitarianism. They are deciding what people should and shouldn't be allowed to say, what opinions people should or shouldn't be allowed to have. And then they're attacking people, attacking us individually, pointing us out. It's like the 2 minutes hate in 1984. They're pointing us out and encouraging people to hate us, and they're basing it all on lies. Then, of course, the upside down, black is white world we live in, are making me the monster here, and themselves the morally superior anti-racists and anti-fascists, as they love to call themselves. But of course, there's another point. Where is the concern about what is written in the Quran and what violence that is inspiring? You won't hear this from them. Apparently, I'm responsible for whipping up some sort of hatred against Muslims, but the Quran is never responsible for the hatred that comes out of Muslims. For example, when Muslims, and they are Muslims, not all Muslims, but they are Muslims, who are terrorising people all over Europe, where are they getting it from? They're getting it from their scriptures, but the left will never address that fact, that I'm not inspiring anyone to attack anyone, but there is a religion inspiring millions to attack us. And I make absolutely no apology for saying so. I am not targeting people. I am being targeted. I and many others by people who know they are lying and who know they are placing us in danger, and who are trying to destroy our lives, They don't rest until they've completely destroyed you. That is what they set out to do. They don't want to debate you and defeat you at the ballot box. They want to destroy you, and they'll do pretty much anything to get there, and we have very, very little in our armoury to fight back. So one or two other things. I just want to go down through some of the bullet points that they sent to me. And the first one, it starts off by saying, you are a far-right extremist, promoting views that label the whole religion of Islam as evil and dangerous. You have stated more than once that the UK is at war with Islam. You have also specifically called Islam, the entire religion, evil. We will discuss that this is of significant concern because it is divisive and demonises an entire community. Once again, they don't get it, either because they're too unintelligent to understand it, or they're deliberately pretending they don't get it. I will say whatever I like about Islam. Islam is a religion. It is a religion that in its scriptures calls for the subjugation of all who won't follow it, calls for the killing of apostates and blasphemers, which sanctions the marriage of underage girls to old men, which kills homosexuals by throwing them off high buildings. This religion has no claim whatsoever on any kind of sensitivity. It is monstrous, and I will say so. And I don't care, I mean, what do they mean by the whole religion? This is something that is probably the most common bit of nonsense that the left will come back with. You're labelling an entire religion. What does that even mean? What does it mean? Is it every verse in the Quran? Every hadith? Is that the entire religion? Or are they actually meaning every single individual Muslim? I suspect there's not a lot of thought been gone into it with a lot of people. So here's the thing. Let's just clear it up. The best way I can think of describing the difference between Islam and every Muslim is that Islam is a book and Muslims are readers of a book. And the difference between the two is exactly the same as any other book and readers of any other book. People are all individuals. They all have their own individual personality and their own way of reading things and interpreting things. I have never and never will blame all Muslims for anything. It's absurd. In fact, the word all can rarely be applied to anything accurately. I am talking about the book. I am talking about the religion. And even if there are bits in it that are nice, it doesn't in any way cancel out or counteract the evil that is in it. And I claim my right to label a religion, not every individual Muslim, but a religion, evil, if I see evil in it. I don't see anything in it that denounces child marriage. I don't see anything in it that denounces violence against apostates or infidels. It's never apologised for. It's never corrected. It's there. And it's there for everyone to read. And I claim the right to call it whatever I like. And I claim the right to maintain that by my moral standards and by millions of people's moral standards, the rape of a 9-year-old child by a grown man is profoundly immoral and wrong and as close to the word evil as I can see. This is what I call evil. I call the totalitarianism of mind control, either by Nazis, by communists, or by Islam, evil. The manipulation of people through religious scripture or anything else. The manipulation of minds, the terrorizing of people by religious leaders is evil to my mind. And I claim my democratic right to say so. You have uncovered nothing, ITV. You uncovered me swearing, as I said, but that's about it. They go on to point out things I have said in public. In a speech in Manchester in June, you said Islam is a killing machine. I said it into a microphone in front of thousands of people with cameras everywhere. And now it's being presented to the public that this is what I say. And I'm trying to avoid, trying to hide from people what I say. They also implied a bit below there, you appointed Jack Buckby as your campaign manager, but neither you or Jack would probably confirm this. Now, I can tell you what that was. We had a couple of emails from The Guardian asking us whether Jack was the campaign manager or not. It's none of their business. I don't spend my time answering questions to The Guardian. What difference does it make what I say to them anyway? They're still going to lie. I completely ignored that email, and so did Jack. We don't have to answer to them for things like this. If Jack was my campaign manager, then so be it. I didn't appoint him to anything. He just did. We worked together to get this stuff going. But once again, they're trying. And by the way, we appeared together. He spoke for a couple of minutes at the launch of my manifesto in Rotherham. That's how much we were trying to hide that we were involved with each other. Again, lots and lots of nonsense. The Guardian today said I was linked with Generation Identity. I know very, very little about Generation Identity. I don't spend my days researching every single group. I know very little about them. I know that Jordan Diamond was involved with them. But again, as I said in my response, and you can read my response on my website, I'm not going to believe what I hear about these people. You know, people like these hard-cosh people and Hazel and all the rest of this arrogant, who think they have a right to tell the rest of us who we can and can't speak to. First of all, they don't know what it is to speak to someone who you disagree with on things. They don't know what it is to go to an event where you don't agree with everybody who's at it, because they don't behave like that. They can't understand how I would speak at an event where I disagree with some of the beliefs of the organisation, because they're so incredibly intolerant of any different views that they can't fathom that you would speak with someone or work with someone who you don't agree with everything on. But I don't. They're the same people who call Generation Identity, whatever they're called, are calling me a Nazi and a fascist and a racist. So why on earth would I believe any of this? I don't run screaming from the room when people say something I don't like or I don't agree with. I have to get For Britain's voice out there. I have to do it at pretty much every opportunity I can get, because that's my job. I need to speak as much and as often as possible and try and persuade as many people as I possibly can. So once again, because I was at the same event as Martin Sellner, who apparently, according to them, is the devil himself, I am essentially responsible for everything Martin Sellner ever says. This is all they've got. This is all they've got. But the sorry thing is that it works. For a lot of people it works. And for that reason, it is dangerous. And for that reason, I do and am going to respond to it. I'm not, to be honest, I'm not overly concerned about it, though. I think what I mostly feel about it is slightly embarrassed. I think that's the sort of overwhelming emotion I feel about it. But I'm not concerned about it. I do think actually it shows me as honest. They're trying to show me as dishonest. I think actually it shows me as honest, because I could, if I believed these things. I'm sure he was around for months. She probably, if I believed any thing if I tried to hide anything, it's likely to have come out. So I think actually what she's done and what they've done is confirmed to people that I only say the same things behind closed doors as I do in public. And all they've got is to deviously and dishonestly intersperse clips of me with other people. And that is essentially their target. But I just want to, before I move on to other things, I just want to read at least part of the letter I told you about to Ofcom from the woman who, the moral philosopher. It's a really, really great letter. And she's raising the issue that they have to justify the fact that they intruded on privacy by pretending that that they could only get this stuff from me if they did it undercover. So it's an excellent letter, but let me just get to this part. I'll copy and paste most of it and put it on my website after this. But she writes about the label far right and impartiality. And she said, a central premise of the programme would appear to be that certain individuals and movements, whether specific groups or more loosely characterised movements, merit investigation as to whether they are far right. This loosely applied term is now bandied about as a slur, which, far from helping debate, obscures issues. Moreover, the implications that can be discerned from the slant of the programme in David Henshaw's letter to Anne-Marie Waters, now in the public domain, together with the investigations at public meetings and public political demonstrations and in pubs, is that anyone associated with anyone under investigation is far right. Such slurs are very hard to shake off and will in many cases lead to social ostracism and in other cases worse consequences. And as she mentions the attack on Annie the Greek in Bristol. The label far right is not only a slur, it is extremely misleading as a characterisation of those concerned about certain elements of Islam. In fact, these concerns are premised on a wish to maintain human rights, equality in ethics and before the law, the rule of law and democracy. It is therefore not only misleading, but actually contrary to the views of the vast majority of those concerned. And your reporter, Hazel, knows this. the entire tenor of your program that the counter-jihad movement is somehow linked to the far right, it is not only wrong but a reversal of the truth. It is based upon concern for human rights, for equality for all, and the totalitarian and violent and supremacist aspects of Islamic ideology. Hard Cash Production have relied on experts, in quote marks, from Hope Not Hate. This organisation is the frequent recipient of criticism on the grounds of bias, but there is no need to elaborate on this here. It therefore seems blindingly obvious that Hope Not Hate are a poor choice of expert to provide unbiased coverage. This could well appear to be a biased slur on a fledgling political party. Not only is this inconsistent with the broadcasting code, unless strenuous steps are taken to ensure balance, and I don't mean a quick 15-second disclaimer at the end that Anne-Marie Waters denies the allegations, it undermines the basic principles of our democracy. And I say this as someone who is not a member of For Britain, simply a supporter of democracy and fairness. She goes on to say, this is the last bit, an additional point is that in order to understand and interpret what she was hearing, I hope that Hazel, plus everyone involved in editorial decisions, was fully trained and had a good knowledge of the Quran, the full biography of Muhammad, and a basic understanding of Hadith, of Sharia law, and a basic appreciation of Islamic history. Very many of those who warn about the problematic aspects of Islamic extremism and political Islam have the problem that if your audience don't know it, the truth sounds so bad, it sounds as if they are making it up or exaggerating. This is very, very long actually, so I will copy and paste this rather than read much more of it out. But it's a brilliant letter, and I'll put it all on my website rather than read it all out to you now, because we have some other bits to get to. But just to finish this part, in a nutshell, I'm not overly concerned about this documentary tonight. I'm more annoyed, to be honest. I'm annoyed that I'm going to see myself being filmed undercover. I'm annoyed that I was filmed undercover. I'm annoyed that I was sitting in a car not knowing I was being recorded. But I'm exasperated and infuriated at how powerless our side of this argument is. It's very, very difficult to cope with. It's very, very difficult to take because they're getting away with this stuff. And they get away with it because we don't have a lot of money. We don't have any voice in the mainstream media. They're not at any point going to give me, for example, a one-to-one interview to try and clear up this stuff. As I say, even my response is edited by them. So it's extremely, it's very disempowering from our side. But the only thing we can take from it is that we must be worrying them. The media attention today, as I said, was primarily about me. So I must be worrying them. And the fact that they need to lie, and the fact that as I said earlier, I think half the country, if not more, knows now that they are lying, will bring more people to us and will make more people trust us. And I'm pleased that it will confirm to the public that I am, despite months of monitoring, undercover monitoring, there was nothing that they could use against me other than what I already say in public. So I'm not overly concerned about it. And also, again, Hazel was not privy to any sort of private, she wasn't involved in what's been called my inner circle. She wasn't at any meetings for Britain or anything of the kind. She was a person, as I said, didn't suspect her as being undercover because I didn't really think of her at all. But she was a person who came along to a lot of events, and we were friendly, and as we are. I hate to think that we will be less friendly in future. We can't sort of let this make us suspicious of every other person. And in any case, this is the second time this has happened. The Mirror sent an undercover reporter to a speech I gave outside the House of Parliament about 2015, I think it was. And again, they pretended that I had said something covertly. It was that a lot of mosques need to close and a lot of people need to be deported. That's what I said. And I've said that at several meetings and on YouTube and everywhere else as well. So it's the same thing. can't get anything on me, so they fictionalise an account and pretend that that they've exposed me. As I say, I don't want to be overly suspicious of people, but I guess I probably will be, and it's a shame. It's a shame, but we will still be friendly. We will still be friendly. We're not going to let her sort of wreck our friendly movement, which it is. So on to other things. The party for Britain. Some really exciting meetings I've had since I last spoke to you. Hoping that we will have some ready-made branches in place. There are already a couple of branches in place, Plymouth and Rotherham. And I've had some meetings which I hope will lead to a few more. And on that, I want to say something in case people who are, for example, still members of UKIP and who are tempted to come over and join For Britain, but are in two minds. I kind of see this a lot. I see people who want to join, who want to support, but are in two minds about whether or not it'll take off, and whether or not, UKIP, I believe UKIP is dead. A lot of people believe UKIP is dead. But essentially, I think a lot of people are hedging their bets at the moment, and thinking, well, I'll hang on and see what happens with For Britain before I decide to commit to it. While I understand and I have some sympathy for that, the fact of the matter is, if you don't join, we need you to make it happen. That's the whole point. Instead of watching and waiting to see what happens, join us and make it happen. We need activists all over the country. We need branches all over the country. And there's really nothing to lose here. There's nothing to lose here. As I said, UKIP is gone. UKIP is not going to inspire anybody. UKIP is not even challenging Theresa May on Brexit. So it's done. It's done. The UKIP have tried so hard to be part of the mainstream now that they've forgotten entirely that actually victory lies outside the mainstream, and it's outside the mainstream where we need to be going, because that's getting very, very large, and again, probably around half the country. So there's really nothing to lose here. We have a strong message, and we will get it out, but we need people. We need people. So if you're in two minds and wondering, waiting to see what will happen, all I can say is join the party and make it happen, because we need you. We need people to commit, to get on board, and to make this a strong party. It is happening. A lot of people are joining. We've had in the first week, about 1,300 people sign up. Lots of donations. So I had wanted to get to 2,000 by Christmas, so well on course to do that, and double that by May's elections next year. So that's the plan, but we need people to join. We need people to support, we need people to donate, but particularly to join and get active, and make this happen. Make this happen. We really can. The timing is right. There's a huge appetite for the truth out there. There's a huge appetite for plain speaking out there. There's an enormous backlash against the political elite and against politics as usual. And we're seeing it with election result after election result. And Britain is no different. Britain is no different to the rest of Europe, who is now starting to vote for openly and expressly nationalist and anti-Islam parties. And there is simply no one in Britain for people to vote for except us. We have to step in to that void, and we can and we will if people join and make it happen. There's also a point I wanted to make, and it's a point I made at a meeting the other night, and someone said to me, you need to make this point over and over again. So I'm going to make it here as well. UKIP had once said that they were a filter for the far right, that actually they were giving people a place to go who otherwise would have gone to National Front or BNP or those type of parties. Now, they were right. UKIP was a filter for that. UKIP did take people who weren't suited to National Front type beliefs, but who were patriotic and nationalist and needed a place to go, and UKIP did provide that place to go. Now people need a place to go with concerns about Islam and with Muslim immigration, for example, and that one is key. Of course, it's not all about that, but that one is key, and it's going to be our unique selling point. But one thing that I also want us to be is that same filter to stop people going over to the real far right, over to joining up with neo-Nazis because they feel they have nowhere else to go. I want to now provide that moderate place where people don't feel they have to go and support actual real far right and actual neo-Nazis. And it's a really important part of what I want for Britain to be and what I want us to do. So I wanted to make that point, as I think it's quite important. Things coming up. Well, tomorrow night I'm in London, so I won't, as I said, I won't be watching this exposure documentary. I'm debating Islam in London tomorrow night at Conway Hall, and again I'll post on my Twitter a link to that straight after this. Next week I will be having more meetings, again selling the party to the supportive but undecided, and trying to again get, because if people would come over, we would have several new branches in place. So I've still, I think, got, again, the hesitancy, the people wanting to see what will happen. So I'm going around various parts of the country to try and persuade people to bite the bullet and to jump, and to just take a leap of faith, because we can succeed if they do. And we will succeed. We will succeed. The timing is right. The political zeitgeist is right. All we need to do is get the people in the organisation, and it's pretty much unbeatable, I think, because our message is absolutely resonates with large numbers of the public, and I have absolutely no doubt about it. What else is going on? A couple of the fundraising dinners coming up. Again, I'll post links to those when I'm at 8 o'clock from my Twitter account. If you can, please do. It's not only fundraising. I mean, obviously we need to and want to raise funds, but I also want to get people together. And social events are quite important. As I say, they get people together, they get people chatting, and alliances are made, and ideas are formed, and more activity results from these. And you become part of something, and I want people to feel part of the party. So that's another main reason for doing a couple of events in the next month. As I want to get people together, and obviously I will be there, and I will make a speech to both of them, and there'll be some nice food and some drinks, and I do hope people can make it along. Another thing I want to do, and if there are any, I'll perhaps grab some volunteers for this, is a Christmas party. And I hope I'm not biting off more than I can chew with this, because I know it's these things are a nightmare to arrange. But I do want a Christmas party, and I wanted to have a Christmas party every year. And the reason is very simple. I want us to celebrate Christmas. I'm a very much a celebrator of Christmas. I love Christmas. I've loved it since I was a child, and I still love it. And it's the only day of the year when every single member of my family, of my immediate family, is in the same room at the same time. So whether a person is religious or not, and I'm not particularly religious, not religious at all actually, Christmas is a linchpin of our culture. It's the highlight, it's the cultural highlight of the year, and I want us to celebrate it. I want us to celebrate it as a homage to our culture and to our cultural traditions. And I think I want to make a big deal out of Christmas every year, and I'll do actually a video podcast on Christmas Eve with a couple of bits to say about our culture and about what's happening to our culture. So as I say, I want to have a Christmas party. I also want it to, as a sort of thank you to the activists and people who have helped out so much so far. So many incredible people have given so much of their time and their energy, and they're putting themselves on the line. They're putting themselves at risk of all sorts of abuses, and these are wonderful, brave people. So as many times, as often as we can celebrate together and celebrate, more importantly, our culture, then I'm very happy to do so. So I'll be looking. I'll have to seek out a couple of volunteers to do this, but I'll let you know as soon as I can. I've got about 10 minutes left, so I want to go through just a couple of media highlights, as I said I would do every fortnight, and I'll a couple of media highlights and just give a view of them. And today, it just blew my mind, and again I'll send it out after this, is one in the Daily Mail today, which said child migrants, the headline, child migrants to have priority in the NHS. High Court judge rules young who arrive unaccompanied must be put at the head of the queue. Now, if you read down, it says here that a judge had said not only that they would be prioritised, asylum seekers would be at the top of the queue for healthcare, but also for school places. So migrants are to be prioritised over native Brits in the NHS and the allocation of school places. Now, just take that in for a second. Take that in for a second. We're talking about people who are coming to our country who have never paid into our system, who, many of whom, and we know this, are lying about being minors, lying about their age. And of course we can't do any tests for their age because Diane Abbott says it's racist, so we can't do that. So we are not only paying, the British taxpayer is not only paying to fund all of this, but is being put to the back of the queue while we do so. You're being told to pay up and shut up. And they're actually so unashamed that they are telling us that native Brits who pay for all of this are actually not going to be given what they're going to be placed behind total strangers from another country who've just arrived here. It's the same, we saw the same recently with police when they said that they weren't going to bother with crimes anymore. Essentially, that is what they said. They were not going to bother turning up to several to burglaries and assaults unless there was CCTV. And also that they were going to give priority to non-English speakers. So once again, those of us for whom English is a first language are at the back of the queue. So brazen and blatant is the British establishment against its own people that it is telling us to our face, you are second class in this country now. They have this insane assumption that to be British is to be wealthy. That somehow the British people don't need the NHS or to have a school place close to where they live. This is because, this is decisions made by a judge, Mr. Justice Peter Jackson. Well, I bet Mr. Justice Peter Jackson doesn't rely on the NHS. And I bet his children aren't relying on the local state school either. They live in a completely different world, and they show nothing but contempt for ordinary British people. So much so, they're willing to tell us, you are second class now. We will get to you when we're finished dealing with the important people, which are the people who've only just arrived here, who are often hostile to our culture and our way of life. And the only thing they want from us is to pay up and shut up. That is exactly how we're being treated. And I don't hear anyone in politics talking about this. I don't hear any condemnation from any party that British people, often poor British people, are left without services. I've actually recently tried to register with a GP, which I haven't done since I moved over here. It's taken weeks just to register. Heaven forbid if I was looking for an appointment. The entire thing is a mess. And yet, even with all the strain in the NHS, even with all the strain in schooling, still we're being told, in fact, we're being told within this, in this context, that you are at the back of the queue. The British taxpayer who pays for the whole thing, who bankrolled the whole thing, is at the back of the queue. It is absolutely scandalous, and we shouldn't be tolerating it. And speaking of another world and a bubble, I saw a documentary this week on BBC Two called Who's Spending Britain's Billions? If you didn't see it, I highly recommend it. This goes into, I'll bring up the coverage of it here. Hundreds of millions of pounds of taxpayers' money is spent on contracts with management consultancy firms who can take a percentage of any savings they find. Now, they are bringing in consultancy firms to make savings and then giving a percentage of that saving to the consultancy firm. Now, management consultancy. The public sector is awash with managers. They are highly paid, overpaid, and they're completely, many of them, incompetent and unnecessary. And it's proof. This is proof. If you are a manager and you have to hire a consultant to tell you how to manage, then I suggest you shouldn't be in that job at all. Why are we paying for this sea of managers across the public sector, and the NHS is the part I know best, and then letting them pay hundreds of millions of pounds of our money to private firms to come in and tell them how to do their job? So we're paying for management twice, and we're still getting completely substandard services, if we get any services at all. Isn't it great? We're paying twice for nothing. It goes on to reveal that these contracts are covered by confidential deals, meaning very little is known about them in public. Of course, very little is known about them in public. If the public were aware of these things, if this was on BBC Breakfast every other day rather than some nonsense about Donald Trump, people would know about this, and they would be angry about this. And of course, they would begin to look at the corrupt, money hemorrhaging, incompetent public sector in this country and begin to ask questions. And of course the public sector is lefty dominated, so the media is giving it very little attention. People need to know and understand where their taxes are going. I want real transparency from the public sector in their taxes, in where people's taxes are being spent. You saw as well this week the NHS spending money on creating transgender champions in the health service. Transgender champions in the health service. What on earth is... What? The NHS is not the place for transgender champions. It's a place for medical treatment, and only medical treatment. They are using this crazy common purpose loony left, is using the NHS to push this alternative politics and these alternative social views when they have absolutely no right or mandate to promote transgenderism or anything else. It should be medically treating people and only medically treating people. But it's instead awash with diversity champions and diversity chiefs, and its primary concern is diversity. And by the way, in the NHS, more and more doctors are not native English speakers. Now, I've seen this a lot in the health service, and it's growing and growing. I've sort of come in and out of the health service over the last 10 years or so. And each time I go back into it, I see it, how different it is from the last time I was in it. And it's getting more and more prevalent for staff not to be native English consultants. Now, my question has been, if I can't often understand what a doctor is saying, how are they explaining complex cardiological or neurological or oncological or any serious medical condition to often probably to elderly that can't be understood? And this is, I am certain that there are people walking out of hospitals in this country not truly understanding what's been said to them because the staff can't speak English. And again, the NHS goes out of its way to hire non-native Brits. It goes out of its way. It is essentially, it is governed like the rest of the public sector, like police, like the CPS, governed by the hard left, who are using these public institutions to push their politics. And they're using your money and my money to do it. They're spending our money not on the standard services they're supposed to be delivering, but on pushing political views through the public sector. And of course, they also use employment to do this. Can you imagine being the person at the meeting where they discussed transgender champions? Can you imagine being the person to put up your hand and say, excuse me, I don't agree with this. I think this is it's got nothing to do with the NHS and it's a complete waste of money. Can you imagine being that person? That person might well be hounded out of their job. No one is going to stand up to these bullies within the public sector. Only thing that's left is for us out here in the real world to start shouting and start trying our best to expose and to hold them to account, because that's what's missing in the public sector. There is zero accountability, and it is a policy of For Britain to put in place actual practical systems that we can hold the public sector to account. We want to know how and why they're spending our money, and we want to know who they are. We want to know who they are, what kind of people they are, what kind of organisations they've come from. We deserve to know this. This is our money. I want For Britain to represent the taxpayer and to speak up for the taxpayer who is constantly being ripped off and constantly having their money thrown down the drain on nonsense, on left-wing, cultural Marxist, utter tripe. So just a few things that have caught my eye over the last few days. I will, as I say, post many things out on Twitter now that I've talked about this evening. So we're pretty much done for time. Thanks again for tuning in. Please share this. Share it as much as you can. Like, comment. I'll send a video of it out on Twitter now. Share and try and get our message around to as many people as possible. I'll be back in 2 weeks' time, and I'll update then what has happened and gone on in the next 2 weeks. But obviously I'll be on Twitter as well daily, posting things and posting events and news articles and all the rest of it. So thanks again, and I shall see you all in 2 weeks' time. Take care.